The pulse rifle barked 3 times in rapid succession, each muzzle flash painting the smoke-choked air in stroboscopic orange. Armor-piercing rounds tore through chitinous hide with the wet sound of splitting bone, sending sprays of blue-black ichor across the twisted wreckage of what had been someone's home 12 hours ago. Sergeant Finn rolled behind the crumbling polymer walls of a collapsed hab unit. His Mark 7 power armor's servos whining in protest as alien claws raked sparks from the concrete where his head had been a heartbeat before. The scream of Kythex warriors echoed through Millhaven Colony's burning streets, a sound like metal being torn apart, combined with the death cry of something that had never learned to fear. Until today. His helmet's heads-up display painted the tactical situation in stark crimson geometries. 17 heat signatures converging on his position from 3 directions. Motion sensors screamed warnings as more contacts poured through the gaps in the colony's perimeter defenses. The acrid stench of burning plasteel mixed with something worse, the sweet, cloying odor of human blood and the metallic tang of alien biochemistry. Too many for one mobile infantry trooper, even with powered armor and 2 decades of combat experience carved into muscle memory and scar tissue. But Finn had been in worse spots. Westmark Station, the siege of Grimhall, the nightmare that was Operation Blackwater, where his previous squad had learned the galaxy's hardest lesson. Sometimes good soldiers die for no better reason than being in the wrong place when the universe decided to get ugly. He'd survived because he understood something most people didn't. Sometimes the only way out was through. And sometimes through meant painting the walls with enough alien blood to make the survivors think twice about following. The nearest warrior crested the rubble pile like a living nightmare sculpted from chitin and hunger. 8 feet of evolutionary perfection designed for one purpose, killing everything that wasn't Kythex. Its compound eyes caught the fireglow from burning atmospheric processors, reflecting the destruction in 1,000 fractured images. Mandibles dripped with corrosive saliva that could dissolve titanium steel alloys. Finn's targeting system painted a crimson dot between those eyes. Time to remind these bugs why humans had clawed their way to the top of Earth's food chain and then kept climbing until they reached the stars. His rifle spoke again. The heavy round punched through the creature's head carapace, with the sound of a hammer hitting an eggshell, spraying brain matter and ichor across the hab unit's shattered windows. The warrior's death scream cut through the colony's burning air, a shriek of agony and surprise that rippled through the psychic network, connecting every Kythex within 1,000 kilometers. Something new entered that network, something the swarm had never encountered in 3 million years of galactic conquest. Doubt. 2 kilometers away, buried in the depths of the primary hive complex that had been Millhaven's civic center, the Overmind felt its warrior die. Not just the termination of biological function, that was common enough in warfare. This was different. The creature's final moments carried flavors the collective consciousness had never tasted. The human's savage satisfaction as he killed. The predatory joy in causing maximum damage. The tactical assessment that treated overwhelming odds as a personal challenge rather than a death sentence. Other species fled when the swarm descended. They died quickly, efficiently, their terror feeding the collective's sense of superiority. These humans tasted of something else entirely. They tasted of hunger, of barely controlled violence held in check only by discipline and brotherhood. They enjoyed this. The Overmind's massive cerebral cortex pulsed as it processed sensory data from 1,000 compound eyes scattered across the colony. The humans fought like cornered predators instead of prey. Used tactics the hive had never encountered, coordinated ambushes, psychological warfare, weapons that seemed designed specifically to inflict maximum trauma on chitinous anatomy. Most disturbing was their emotional resonance. Other species radiated fear, desperation, the bitter taste of inevitable defeat. These humans tasted of fury and bloodlust, and something worse, professional competence combined with the kind of creativity that turned everyday objects into implements of destruction. They weren't just surviving, they were adapting, learning, getting better at killing with each engagement. Finn vaulted over a collapsed support beam, his armor's jump jets firing in controlled bursts that sent him 20 meters through smoke-filled air. The colony's main thoroughfare stretched before him like something from a fevered dream. Shattered glass and twisted metal, painted with alien corpses, and the phosphorescent burns of energy weapons. His squad should be holding the transportation hub 6 blocks north. Should be alive and fighting, and turning their little corner of hell into a demonstration of why mobile infantry earned their reputation one body at a time. If they were still breathing, his comm system crackled with static-filled transmissions. Distant pulse rifle fire provided a staccato counterpoint to the bass roar of burning structures. Somewhere in the smoke, someone was screaming orders in accented English, while something else answered in the clicking, chittering language of the swarm. Movement caught his peripheral vision, 3 warriors emerging from what had been a children's playground. Their serrated foreclaws gleamed with fresh blood. Human blood, judging by the color and the way it steamed in the thin atmosphere. Finn's targeting computer painted threat assessments across his visor, calculating trajectories and engagement probabilities in the microseconds between heartbeats. Ammunition count, 47 rounds. Enemy disposition, hostile, aggressive, and too damn close for comfort. Time for a professional consultation on the subject of applied violence. The shoulder-mounted grenade launcher thumped like thunder in a bottle. High-explosive death blossomed among the creatures, shredding exoskeletons with the casual efficiency of industrial machinery. The concussion wave shattered windows 3 blocks away and sent a mushroom cloud of debris and vaporized alien biology climbing toward the colony's atmospheric dome. The survivors charged through the smoke and flame, driven by hive instinct and 3 million years of evolutionary programming that recognized only prey and predator. No fear, no hesitation, no understanding that sometimes prey evolved teeth. They learned quickly. Finn's chainblade roared to life with the sound of 10,000 angry hornets. Diamondoid teeth spun at velocities that turned air into a cutting medium. The weapon was humanity's answer to the galaxy's obsession with energy shields and exotic armor compositions. Sometimes the old ways worked best. Sometimes you needed to get up close and personal. The first warrior died when the blade took its head clean off at the base of its neck, sending the severed skull spinning through the air in a spray of blue ichor. The second managed a swipe that scraped sparks from Finn's chest plate before losing 2 legs and most of its thorax to a diagonal cut that bisected its center of mass. The third tried to retreat. Finn didn't believe in letting lessons go unlearned. The chase lasted 30 meters through the wreckage of someone's carefully planned life, past overturned ground cars and the scattered remains of what had been a flower garden. The dying warrior broadcast its terror through the hive link, painting the collective consciousness with flavors of pain and confusion, and the growing realization that humans weren't prey at all. They were apex predators wearing the masks of civilization, and sometimes the masks came off. In the hive complex, the Overmind recoiled from the sensation like touching a live electrical conductor. The creature's final moments played through its consciousness like acid eating through neural pathways. The human hadn't pursued from tactical necessity, but from pure predatory instinct. Had killed not just to survive, but because some fundamental part of his psychology found satisfaction in the act. This was not how conquest was supposed to proceed. The swarm descended, inferior species died, planets fell. The cycle repeated across star systems until the galaxy belonged to those strong enough to take it. These humans were rewriting the rules. The Overmind's thoughts turned to its spawn scattered across the colony. Thousands of warriors, drones, and hunters engaged with the human defenders. The reports flooding back through the psychic network painted an impossible picture. Humans dying, yes, but taking dozens of Kythex with them. Humans improvising weapons from debris, turning every piece of wreckage into a tool of destruction. Humans coordinating without apparent communication, moving like pack predators that had evolved specifically to hunt swarm species. Most disturbing of all, humans adapting their tactics in real time, learning from each engagement, and applying those lessons with the kind of strategic flexibility that suggested genuine intelligence rather than programmed responses. the kind of intelligence that had built starships and created weapons, and refused to accept defeat even when defeat was the only logical option. Finn's comm system crackled to life as he sprinted through the colony's industrial sector, his armor's enhanced mobility systems turning him into something between a heavily armed soldier and a guided missile with anger management issues. Martinez here, holding the southern approach with Kowalski and Reeves, body count at 78 and climbing. The voice carried the kind of satisfaction that came from doing a job well in circumstances that would have broken lesser people. Good. Professional pride was what separated soldiers from armed civilians. Finn grinned behind his visor. Copy that, Martinez. What's your ammunition status? Running low on standard rounds, Sarge, switching to incendiary. These chitinous bastards burn real pretty when you hit them with white phosphorus. Finn could hear the smile in the corporal's voice. Martinez had lost his younger brother in the Kythex raid on Westmark Station 3 months ago. The man had very personal reasons for being here, and very personal definitions of what constituted appropriate payback. The transportation hub loomed ahead through the smoke, a massive structure of reinforced titanium steel and military-grade composites that had been designed to withstand everything from natural disasters to concentrated orbital bombardment. Pulse rifle fire strobed through the haze like deadly lightning. Explosions shook the ground with enough force to crack the colony's foundation pylons. His people were still fighting, still alive, still proving that sometimes the best defense was an offense conducted with extreme prejudice and professional attention to detail. Finn activated his suit's enhanced mobility mode, servos flooding with hydraulic pressure that transformed the armor from protective shell to weapons platform. Mass redistributed. Power cells cycled to maximum output. Every system in the Mark VII shifted into configurations designed for close-quarters battle against overwhelming odds. He hit the hub's main entrance at 60 kilometers per hour with the subtlety of a kinetic strike and twice the enthusiasm. The 3 warriors guarding the doorway never had time to process what was happening. One moment they were scanning for threats. The next, they were decorating the walls in abstract patterns of blue and silver. Inside the hub, controlled chaos reigned with the kind of professional efficiency that separated elite units from everyone else who simply carried weapons. His squad had taken defensive positions behind overturned maggled cars and cargo containers, turning the terminal into a killing field that would have made ancient fortress designers weep with envy. Dozens of Kythex corpses carpeted the floor in neat geometric patterns that spoke to careful fire discipline and tactical awareness. But more kept pouring through breached walls and service tunnels, a seemingly endless stream of chitin and hatred flowing through every gap in their perimeter. Private Nash fired controlled bursts from behind a transport console, her movements precise and economical despite the carnage unfolding around her. Each shot was aimed. Each trigger pull meant another dead alien. No wasted ammunition. No unnecessary risks. Professional soldiering at its finest. Status report, Finn called as he rolled behind cover next to her position, his armor scarred and scorched but still functional. Nash's helmet turned toward him, her visor reflecting muzzle flashes from across the terminal like a mirror made of war. Sir, we've got approximately 90 hostiles in the immediate area, with more incoming through the maintenance tunnels. Ammunition at 30%. 2 wounded but mobile. No KIA yet. Yet, the word hung in the recycled air like a promise none of them were ready to keep. Finn assessed their situation with the cold calculation that had kept him alive through 12 major engagements and twice as many minor ones. The hub's layout offered multiple defensive positions, but also too many breach points. Standard doctrine called for fighting withdrawal to secondary positions while calling for orbital support. Standard doctrine could take a long walk off a short pier. Nash, signal the fleet. Tell them we're holding this position and to prep for dust-off in exactly 1 hour. Sir. The private's voice carried a note of confusion that matched her body language. Strategic analysis indicates our position will be overrun within 20 minutes, given current casualty rates and ammunition expenditure. Let me worry about the strategic analysis, Nash. You just worry about putting rounds downrange and keeping these bugs honest about their life expectancy. The young soldier nodded and turned back to her rifle, her finger never quite relaxing on the trigger. Good tension kept you alive in situations like this. Overconfidence got you killed. Across the terminal, Kowalski and Reeves maintained overlapping fields of fire from elevated positions behind cargo containers. Their pulse rifles had switched to single-shot mode to conserve ammunition, but every trigger pull still meant another dead alien. Professional efficiency refined to its most lethal expression. But efficiency wouldn't be enough against these numbers. Not without something extra. Something that would turn defensive action into strategic victory and send a message that would echo through Kythex racial memory for generations. Time to get creative. Finn opened a private channel to Martinez. "Rico, how many of those incendiaries do you have left? 6 grenades and maybe 30 rounds for the rifle, Sarge. Plus some party favors I improvised from maintenance supplies. These bugs don't like industrial solvents any more than they like high explosives." Martinez's voice carried the kind of enthusiasm that came from discovering new and interesting ways to kill things that needed killing. Good innovation was what separated humans from species that relied purely on evolutionary advantages. Perfect. I need you to get creative with those explosives. See those support pillars. Martinez's visor tracked across the hub's structural framework, taking in the massive titanium steel columns that held up 60 stories of colony infrastructure. "I see them. You thinking what I think you're thinking." Finn's grin was audible over the comm. Sometimes the best defense is bringing the whole damn building down on their heads. The plan was insane. It was also perfectly human, taking an impossible situation and turning it into someone else's problem through the creative application of controlled demolition and tactical stubbornness. While Martinez rigged the support columns with improvised charges, the rest of the squad maintained defensive fire. The Kythex pressed their assault with mechanical precision, each wave slightly larger than the last. Their tactics were predictable, brute force assault coordinated through the hive mind. Predictable meant exploitable, and exploitable meant dead aliens if you had the imagination to see possibilities where others saw only obstacles. Finn waited until the next wave committed fully to their charge before springing the trap. Martinez's voice echoed across the squad channel with the satisfaction of a professional about to demonstrate his craft. Fire in the hole. The explosions came in sequence, each charge timed to maximize structural damage while minimizing risk to human personnel. Steel beams groaned like dying giants. Polymer supports cracked with sounds like gunshots. Tons of debris crashed down on the advancing swarm, crushing dozens of warriors beneath rubble and twisted metal. But the building was still standing. The aliens were still coming, and ammunition counters were still dropping towards zero with mathematical inevitability. That's when the real education began. In the hive complex, the Overmind's distress had become something approaching genuine panic, an emotion the collective consciousness had never experienced in 3 million years of galactic conquest. The neural feedback from the transportation hub painted a picture of systematic slaughter conducted with disturbing enthusiasm. These humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were enjoying themselves in ways that violated every assumption about prey species behavior. Their thoughts tasted of satisfaction and professional pride, and something else, the kind of creativity that turned defensive action into offensive art. The Overmind reached out through the network, touching the minds of its remaining warriors. What it found there shook its understanding of the galactic order to its foundations. Fear, uncertainty, the bitter taste of prey thoughts where there should be only hunger and aggression. Some of its warriors were hesitating before charging human positions. Others were attempting to withdraw from unfavorable engagements. Behavior patterns that had been bred out of the species millions of years ago were reasserting themselves like genetic memories awakening from evolutionary slumber. The humans were changing them, infecting them with doubt, teaching them concepts that had no place in the collective consciousness. This could not be allowed to continue, but stopping it meant understanding something the Overmind had never needed to comprehend before. What happened when an irresistible force met an immovable object that refused to acknowledge the physics of defeat? Back in the hub, Finn's squad had settled into the deadly rhythm of urban warfare. Cover, move, shoot, communicate. The four-part harmony of professional violence practiced until it became instinct more reliable than breathing. Nash's rifle chattered in precise three-round bursts. Kowalski lobbed grenades with sniper precision that turned alien warriors into abstract art installations. Reeves provided suppressing fire while Martinez repositioned, his improvised explosives turning every engagement into a demonstration of human creativity applied to the problem of alien mortality. Teamwork, another human concept the galaxy found difficult to understand and impossible to replicate. The next wave of Kythex emerged from the rubble with renewed aggression. Larger forms moved among the standard warriors, hunters with acid spitters and natural camouflage that rendered them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Brutes whose armored carapaces could shrug off standard pulse rifle rounds like raindrops. Finn's targeting system lit up like a sensor display in a target-rich environment. Contact, heavy variance, switching to armor-piercing. The squad's fire shifted automatically, muscle memory and training overriding conscious thought. Heavier rounds designed to penetrate starship hulls found their marks in chitinous armor with the precision of surgical instruments. Acid splashed harmlessly against power armor plates rated for industrial applications. The hunter's camouflage proved useless against thermal imaging and motion detectors calibrated for battlefield conditions. Human technology versus evolutionary perfection. Technology was winning, but not by the comfortable margins that made warfare predictable. Ammunition counters dropped steadily toward zero. Armor integrity fluctuated as alien claws found gaps in defensive positions. Fatigue toxins flooded bloodstreams despite stimulant injections. The mathematics of attrition were working against them with clockwork inevitability. They couldn't hold much longer, not with conventional tactics, not against these numbers. That's when Finn made the call that would echo through Kythex racial memory for generations to come. All units switched to melee weapons. Time to get personal. 5 chainblades roared to life in unison, their harmonic frequencies creating a sound like industrial machinery having a religious experience. The noise was beautiful and terrible, technological symphony conducted in the key of controlled violence. Finn led the charge, his armor's servos screaming as he vaulted over a cargo container straight into the teeth of the swarm, with the enthusiasm of someone who had found his true calling and decided to excel at it. What followed wasn't combat in any traditional sense. It was art, performance art conducted with edged weapons and powered armor in the medium of alien biology. Nash's blade opened a hunter from mandibles to stinger, blue ichor painting the walls in patterns that would have made abstract expressionists weep with envy. Martinez carved through a cluster of warriors like a sculptor working in flesh and bone, each cut precisely calculated for maximum damage and aesthetic impact. Kowalski and Reeves fought back to back, their weapons spinning in deadly arcs that left geometric trails of severed limbs and geometric impossibilities written in alien blood. Their movements were synchronized, efficient, beautiful in the way that perfect teamwork always was. And Finn danced through it all like death itself had taken human form and decided to pursue a career in extreme violence. His blade found gaps in armor that shouldn't have existed, severed nerve clusters with surgical precision, while his boots crushed compound eyes beneath diamondoid treads. The Kythex, bred for millennia to feel no fear, learned what terror meant when it wore human faces and carried chainblades. In the hive complex, the Overmind screamed. The psychic shockwave rippled through the network like a tsunami of pure horror, carrying with it the accumulated nightmare of watching an apex predator species unleash its full potential on creatures that had never learned to be afraid. Images of humans moving through the swarm like living nightmares sculpted from metal and malice. The taste of their satisfaction as they painted the walls with alien blood. The sounds they made, not screams of fear or pain, but laughter. They were laughing while they killed, finding joy in close combat that should have been desperate survival, treating overwhelming odds as entertainment rather than existential threat. The Overmind's massive form convulsed as it processed the impossible data. These creatures weren't just dangerous, they were fundamentally alien in ways that transcended biology. What species found joy in violence? What evolutionary path led to beings that became more effective when outnumbered? What kind of predator grew stronger under pressure and more creative when facing extinction? Its thoughts turned to the colony ships hanging in orbit. Thousands of vessels carrying millions of warriors ready to begin the next phase of planetary consumption. Ships that suddenly seemed inadequate against an enemy that treated impossible odds as a personal challenge. For the first time in its species' history, the Overmind considered the possibility that there were fights not worth fighting, prey too dangerous to hunt, species better left alone in whatever corner of space they chose to claim. The melee lasted exactly 8 minutes and 43 seconds. When it ended, the transportation hub was silent except for the hum of power armor servos and the distant sound of fires burning themselves out in the colony's ruins. Kythex corpses formed abstract sculptures of death throughout the terminal, their blue ichor creating patterns that spoke to the terrible efficiency of human warriors, given sufficient motivation and proper equipment. Not one human had fallen, not one had even been seriously wounded, professional soldiering at its absolute finest. Finn wiped alien blood from his visor and checked his chronometer, 57 minutes until dust-off. Ahead of schedule despite overwhelming odds and ammunition shortages. His comm system activated as the fleet began its descent from orbit. Extraction coordinates confirmed, Sergeant. We're seeing massive enemy withdrawal patterns across the colony. Looks like they're pulling back to their ships faster than tactical doctrine suggests. Copy that, Control. We'll be ready for pickup. As the squad gathered their gear and prepared for extraction, Nash approached Finn's position. Her armor was scored and dented, but intact, her movements still precise despite 8 hours of continuous combat. Her voice carried a note of confusion that matched her body language. Sir, I don't understand the tactical situation. We eliminated maybe 300 of them. They had thousands in reserve. Why are they retreating when victory was mathematically achievable? Finn looked out through the hub's shattered windows at the alien fleet breaking orbit, with the kind of haste that suggested panic rather than strategic withdrawal. Running with their tails between their legs after losing less than 1% of their invasion force. It didn't make tactical sense. Unless you understood human psychology and what it meant to a hive mind species that relied on certainty and predictable outcomes. Sometimes, Nash, it's not about the numbers. Sometimes it's about sending a message that travels faster than hyperspace and hits harder than orbital bombardment. The message was simple, clear, written in blue ichor across every surface of the colony and burned into the collective consciousness of every Kythex that had participated in the assault. Humanity might be outnumbered, might be outgunned, might be scattered across 1,000 worlds without the resources for a proper war. But they were still human. Still, the descendants of apex predators who had clawed their way to the top of their homeworlds, food chained through nothing but determination, controlled violence, and the fundamental human inability to know when they were beaten. The Kythex had learned what every species eventually discovered when they decided to test their luck against mobile infantry. Humans didn't just fight wars, they won them. And they enjoyed doing it with the kind of enthusiasm that made retreat the only rational option. As the extraction shuttle settled onto the landing pad with the mechanical precision of fleet operations, Finn took one last look at the carnage they'd created. 5 soldiers against a planetary invasion force. 5 humans who had turned certain death into strategic victory through nothing but skill, determination, and the human talent for finding creative solutions to impossible problems. The shuttle's cargo bay doors hissed open, releasing clean air that carried the scent of recycled atmosphere and military-grade disinfectant. The smell of home. The smell of civilization maintained by people willing to do whatever was necessary to keep it running. Finn's squad filed aboard with the professional efficiency of soldiers who had done their job and lived to tell about it. Their armor was scored and dented, their ammunition exhausted, their bodies pushed beyond normal human limits by stimulants and adrenaline, and the kind of determination that made retreat a foreign concept. But they were smiling, because they had won, because they were alive, because they had proven once again that humans were the galaxy's most dangerous species when properly motivated and adequately equipped. In the depths of space, the Kythex fleet regrouped around the Overmind's flagship, while emergency sessions of the collective consciousness debated response strategies, with the kind of urgency that comes from discovering fundamental assumptions about reality were completely wrong. Some advocated for overwhelming force, bringing 10 times the original invasion fleet. Others suggested avoiding human space entirely until better tactics could be developed. A few even whispered about the possibility that some species were simply too dangerous to conquer. The Overmind listened to the debates with growing certainty about what needed to happen next. It had felt the humans' minds during the final moments of combat, tasted their thoughts as they carved through the swarm with enthusiasm that bordered on religious ecstasy. What it found there was worse than predatory instinct or tactical brilliance. It was love. They loved fighting, loved each other, loved the violence and the brotherhood and the impossible odds that brought out the best in their species. They were addicted to war in ways the collective could barely comprehend, and that addiction made them more dangerous than any conventional enemy the swarm had ever faced, which meant they would keep getting better at it, keep finding new ways to turn disadvantage into victory and defeat into triumph. Keep proving that sometimes the best defense was an offense conducted with extreme prejudice and professional attention to detail. The Overmind's decision rippled through the fleet network with the weight of absolute authority backed by 3 million years of evolutionary wisdom. The human worlds were to be avoided, marked as hazardous space. The species was too dangerous to engage without overwhelming superiority and too creative to predict with conventional tactical models. They had learned the lesson that every successful civilization eventually discovered if they wanted to remain successful. Some prey was too dangerous to hunt. Some fights weren't worth fighting. Some species were better left alone to pursue their own destiny among the stars. As the shuttle climbed toward orbit, Finn opened a channel to Fleet Command. His report was brief, professional, and completely inadequate to capture what had actually happened in the transportation hub and throughout the colony. Mission accomplished, Control. Colony secured. Enemy in full retreat. Recommend follow-up surveillance to ensure complete withdrawal. Copy that, Sergeant. Outstanding work down there. Fleet Intelligence wants a full debrief when you reach the ship. Outstanding. The word didn't even begin to cover what had happened in those 8 minutes of close combat. Didn't capture the moment when 5 humans had proven that sometimes the impossible was just another word for Tuesday. Finn settled back in his acceleration couch as the shuttle broke atmosphere. His squad around him already beginning the ritual of post-mission decompression that helped soldiers transition from killers back to human beings. Nash was cleaning her chain blade with the methodical precision of someone who understood that equipment maintenance was a form of meditation. Martinez was updating his personal kill count with obvious satisfaction, adding today's numbers to a tally that stretched back through 12 major engagements. Kowalski and Reeves were arguing about ammunition expenditure rates with the kind of attention to detail that separated professionals from amateurs. Normal human behavior. The kind of everyday heroism that had carried their species from cave-dwelling primitives to the stars in the span of a few thousand years. The kind that would carry them to whatever challenge came next, whether it wore chitinous armor or something else entirely. Outside the shuttle's viewports, the Kythex fleet was already jumping to hyperspace, carrying news of humanity's capabilities to every corner of the galaxy. Within months, the story would spread, exaggerate, become legend. 5 humans had held off a planetary invasion, had fought an entire swarm to a standstill and lived to tell about it, had turned certain death into strategic victory through nothing but human stubbornness and an unhealthy appreciation for violence applied with scientific precision. The galaxy would remember this day. Remember that humans didn't just participate in wars, they ended them. with extreme prejudice and obvious enthusiasm, and the kind of tactical flexibility that made conventional strategic planning obsolete. And somewhere in the depths of space, other species would look at the Kythex withdrawal and reach the same conclusion the Overmind had come to after tasting human thoughts during combat. Some fights weren't worth picking, especially not with a species that considered impossible odds to be an invitation to party and treated overwhelming enemy numbers as a target-rich environment. The shuttle docked with Fleet Command just as the last Kythex vessel disappeared into hyperspace, carrying with it the hard-earned knowledge that humanity was exactly as dangerous as they claimed to be, maybe more so. And in the depths of the ship, 5 mobile infantry soldiers settled into their bunks with the satisfaction of professionals who had done their job well under impossible circumstances. Tomorrow there would be other battles, other enemies, other impossible situations that required human solutions. But tonight, they could rest easy knowing they had sent a message that would echo through the galaxy for generations. A message written in alien blood and carved into the collective consciousness of an entire species. Humanity was here. Humanity was armed. And humanity was very, very good at what they did best. The universe had been warned.